Call this council meeting to order. If I could, or just before we start, Councillor Danch and Councillor Beauregard will not be here this evening. Councillor Bruno is joining us virtually, and Regional Councillor Davies is away, so he'll not be attending. At this time, if I could call on the Deputy Clerk for our national anthem. And for those, if you could stand. If you're able to stand, please rise.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
At this time, if I could call on Councillor Elliott for the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor. Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawandurunk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
Thank you, Councillor. For the adoption of the agenda, if I could have Councillors Bodner and Elliott move these. Any questions on the agenda or changes? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Under disclosures of interest, we have one disclosure of interest at this time is 8.9, Councillor Hoyle. Any further disclosures? Okay. Approval of the minutes, if I could do these in block. We have items 7.1 through to 7.5. Regular meeting of council, May 28th. Public meeting minutes of April 2nd. Public meeting minutes of June 4th. Public meeting minutes of June 18th. And council in closed session, June 18th, 2024. If I could have Councillors Hoyle and Bagu move these. Any questions on any of the minutes? All in favor? That's carried. Items pulled for separate discussion, 8.1, 8.2, 8.5, 9.2, 9.5. Any further items to be pulled? Councillor Bodner.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Could I pull 8.6?
Yep. 8.6. Anything further? Okay, so council, I got to break up the remainder of the items due to the conflict. So I'm going to go to 8.9 first. It has not been pulled. All those in favor? That's carried. And for the remainder of the items, if I could have councillors Aquilina and Bagu move that. Actually, if they could move all of them, and we'll do that separate vote. Thank you. So for the remaining items, having noted the conflict's already been voted on, all those in favor? That's carried. There are no presentations or delegations. On to the mayor's report. It's a proud time for Port Colborne parents as their children are graduating from elementary school to high school and from high school to college, university, and to working the world. It feels like yesterday Debbie and I joined hundreds of other parents in the school auditorium to watch our boys receive their diplomas. We salute all our city's graduating students. Tonight, almost right at this very moment, 162 students are graduating from Lakeshore Catholic High School. And on Thursday evening, 92 students will graduate from Port Colborne High School. And in the words of Dr. Seuss, you have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself in any direction you choose. Oh, the places you'll go. I remember reading that to my kids. I send special congratulations to members of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, each of whom earned awards and scholarships for their efforts in academics, community service, and leadership. I'm very proud of Sierra Walsh-Fiore, Eva Washell, Maria Gonzalez, Sophia Sika, Jenna Contouras, and Emma Lohr. You did a great work with MyAct this year, and you've all achieved highest academic standings, and you all excelled at extracurricular sports and recreation. Have a great summer, and I look forward to seeing our MyAct committee back in September. Nickel Beach is officially open for the summer. We don't drive or park on the beach anymore, but there's free parking for residents with a Participate Pass. If you don't have yours yet, please come see our customer service team on the first floor at City Hall. Nickel Beach is home to Splashtown Niagara, an inflatable water park that is great for all thrill seekers. Nickel Beach now has a dog zone where you and your furry friend can have a blast together in the sand and water. Centennial Cedar Bay Beach is great for recreational lovers, with tennis courts, volleyball courts, and horseshoe rings available for beachgoers. Please visit our city website for a full list of amenities, parking fees, and rules and regulations for both these beaches. And not only is Nickel Beach so popular with residents and visitors, our community concert series is also a hit. This year's concerts are sponsored by Asai Kasei, Battery Separator of Canada. We're so grateful for their partnership in presenting the concerts for our community. And we were pleased to see more than 800 people attend the Doobie Brothers Experience this past Sunday at the band shell at HH Knoll Lakeview Park. It was the second event in our concert series. The first was ABBA Revisited 2 weeks ago, which was a cool, damp evening, but still well attended. The concerts are free with a donation of a non-perishable food item for the Port Cares Reach Out Center. Our next concert is Sugar Heat, July 5th. They're a Latin band, and there will be professional Latin dancers and salsa lessons right at Lakeview Park. And then on July 13th, coming to the stage is the Jimmy Mirando Swing Band, featuring Port Colborne's own Genevieve Renee Bisson, who you hear weekly at our O Canada for our meetings. With a little more than a month to go, we're in a countdown to the 46th Annual Canal Days Marine Heritage Festival. Our Canal Days launch is this Thursday. That's the day all the bands, who everybody keeps asking, and all the Canal Days events will be announced. There will be a website with everything you need to know about the festival. We are proud and thankful to have the good people of Geo Rail as our title sponsor this year. Geo stepped up with a $75,000 sponsorship for Canal Days. We're thrilled to be working with Geo and with more than 50 other community partners who support our city's signature event. Thank you all for stepping up with financial and volunteer support for a festival that has such a fantastic economic impact on our city. It's a lot of work, but it sure is a lot of fun. To those companies and individuals out there who wish to be part of our Summer Festival of Marine Heritage, don't miss out. There's still time for you to join in with your support, your investment. You can call my office right now or first thing in the morning, and we'll be happy to hook you up with our staff. Before Canal Days, which is 37 days away, we celebrate the greatest country in the world, Canada. Our country celebrates its 157th birthday on Monday, July the 1st. Canada Day is a national holiday for Canadians who will gather in parks and arenas and civic squares for parties and festivals from coast to coast to coast. Our farming heritage will be also celebrated this weekend at the Learn Farm on Wilhelm Road in Sherkston. I've been invited again this year, and I'll be representing council to participate in the opening ceremonies of the Niagara Antique Power Show and Heritage Display Saturday, June 29th, starting at noon. This is the 52nd annual Heritage Show, and it runs all weekend and on Holiday Monday. Also on Holiday Monday, the Port Colborne Optimist Club presents Canada Day in the Park. The Optimists have a full day of fun and activities and music in HH Knoll Lakeview Park. Canada Day in the Park gets underway at 10 a.m. and runs to about 6, with bands on stage at the band shell all afternoon. A highlight of the day will be the Port Colborne Special Olympics team completing the Ontario-wide law enforcement torch run during opening ceremonies at 1 o'clock, and we're really looking forward to that. We can look forward to Canada Day fireworks over the canal at 10 p.m., unless a big ship comes through. We've had a busy few weeks behind us and a busy summer ahead of us. Let's all slow down, enjoy each day. Don't walk so fast, don't drive so fast. Take the time to take it all in, because there sure is a lot to take in this community and so much to be grateful for. And this concludes my report for this evening. Council, any questions? Perfect. Are there any regional councillor questions this evening? Seeing none. Councillor's remarks. Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing, I represented you at the 2024 Budweiser Can-Am Walleye Challenge, where the Mayor's Award was given out, and the winner was Wayne DeWitt from team number 29. And just like a shout out to Dave Malloy and his crew from Erie Tracker who puts on that challenge, and there was a lot of happy people there. That's it.
Great, and thank you for doing that, Councillor. Councillor Hoyle.
To the mayor, I only have one thing tonight, and it's, I just spoke briefly to Joe here, Director of Infrastructure. Fraser from Nickel to Lake Road, that's where the incident happened, and there's been a bunch of calls for speeding in that area, and if the mayor could pass it on to Niagara Regional too. This is going towards the beach area. That's all I have.
On Nickel, Councillor? Down Nickel Street, towards the beach?
Fraser, yeah, no, Fraser from Nickel to Lake.
Oh,
one end,
okay,
that end.
okay. I'll let the staff sergeant know, I'll send him a note tonight. Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick questions and then one compliment. We'll start with the compliment first to Director of Public Works and his crew. I sent an early morning text to Steve on last week on Monday. There was a water main break at Clarence and Forest, and I didn't want them to miss it, and I didn't want it to go on very much longer, so I tried to wake you up and give you the heads up, and they had it fixed within a couple of days, so I appreciate that. But while I've got you, the project at Lions Field, is it on schedule, and will it be ready for Carnival weekend? Oh, sorry, Joe?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, as far as I'm aware, the project is on schedule and will be completed at that time.
Okay, perfect, thanks. Just because it's in the public eye, the fence looks a lot better than the frost fence that was there, so, and then the rest, I'm trying to figure out what they're doing on the main gate, because I can see they've braced up for concrete work and stuff like that, so I'm anticipating seeing that in the next couple of days. But just the fencing on itself is gonna be a huge improvement from that big ugly frost fence, so great work by the design team and the guys that are putting it together. And one question, and I guess it's to bylaw, but I don't know if anybody can take that back. Just driving around, I've noticed a couple of areas where grass along the roadside in town is extremely long, and I know it's by complaint only, and I just wonder if we can get our crews when they're out, if they see something where the grass is a foot or more high, that they can report it. There is an instance on King Street by Kalali where the grass is probably this high along the road in between the fence that's the boundary of the property and the curb, and it's like really, really long. It's hard to miss, and I know that we've probably got a lot of employees going by daily. Somebody could notice it. I just noticed it and I thought, I'll, send a complaint in. But if we do see it, and I know you don't want to be looked at as going after somebody, but there is a bylaw about how long your grass can be. And if we see something that's extremely noticeable, we should be able to get the corrective measures in place sooner than later, especially when we're coming on to summertime and tourists coming in. So if we can keep our city a little cleaner and tidy, that would help. That's all I have.
See ya.
Through your worship to Councillor Elliott, I'll take that back, the recommendation there, and it is true. We have a fleet with numerous vehicles with drivers who should be able to document that and report it. We do grass under lot maintenance now instead of property standards, as you know, which is a lot easier for staff to administer. And we do some proactive enforcement, although we don't want to be perceived to be targeting or picking on people. We do have some sections of our proactive enforcement that includes going back to past violators, so that's a good thing. I just want to confirm, did you say that this one that on King Street has been reported?
No, I just saw it today.
Okay, I'll pass the one on to bylaw, and I did relieve Manager Hanson from coming to the meeting. She asked me if she needed to be here, so for that reason I excused her and told her I would handle any of her questions today, including on the staff reports that she has before us, where she prepped me to know what to say for the questions if there were any, but I will report this back to her. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, all set, Counselor? Yeah. Great, thank you. Counselor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple of questions, and then I have my report from the FCM conference. So further to Councillor Elliott's point on Lionsville, looks great. I've been asked by only one member of the public, but I expect when the outer fence is down. I know that we received a sizable grant for that. And so the question I've received already is, when it looks like wrought iron fence, people see a lot of dollar signs. And I know we did get a substantial grant there. I'm just wondering if Steve or anybody could comment on how much of that is grant and how much is us, even in a rough way, percentages or dollars.
Steve?
Through your worship. So the amount that was through the Public Realm Investment Program, which is through the Niagara region, was in the amount of $96,000. And that's what we received. It was a significant portion of the project. I believe off the top of my head, I want to say it's about $220,000 for the project as a whole. So very close to half. And it also encompasses not only the fencing, but trees inside of the fence. Mural on one of the walls, so you'll see a concrete pad go along the Kalali Street West building, which will lead to an actual nice mural that's going to be out there and picked by the public. And then it also has a grand entranceway with a number of columns that are there as well. So that's kind of the project as a whole, but there was approximately $96,000 that was funded through that program.
Counselor?
Great, thank you, Steve. Was that outfield fence from last year, was that also in that?
Through your worship. So no, that was not. That was a separate project along with the lights.
Okay, great. And second question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Public Works. Spoke to you today, but I've had 5 calls in the last week with regards to my favorite subdivision, Meadow Heights. Which has been an ongoing nightmare, it seems, from certain contractors. So Oriole Drive is nearing completion, and the homes backing onto Apollo are now getting sodded, graded. In the interim, there's been problems with runoff into the drainage area, which apparently both drains got plugged and there's overgrowth in there. I have spoken to Adam. He has spoken to Upper Canada consultants. They've said it would be a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, in that period of time, we had that downpour the other day, and the phone has been ringing with lots of soil and remnants flowing in and over that soak away and into backyards and artificial turf in some of those backyards. Just wondering, Steve, if I could gather together those 4 or 5 residents and Adam or yourself or both of you could perhaps meet with them this week. And I just think Upper Canada needs to understand that 2 weeks is too long, and if they have to put in filter cloth in the meantime, so be it. They shouldn't be going through what they have been going through for months. I'm wondering if you could arrange that, if I can get the folks together.
Mr. Szapowski?
Yes, through your worship, Adam or myself, or Joe here would be more than happy to go out and meet the residents on site and go through the situation that's happening.
That's great. Thanks, Steve. And just with respect to last week, I know you were out in Calgary, or June 6th through 9th, I shouldn't say last week. It's been a while because we haven't had a council meeting. The mayor, Councillor Baggio, myself, were attended the FCM and conference in Calgary. It was unfortunate that during that the infamous water main break happened in Calgary that made national news, and a lot of the study tours were of city facilities, and they closed them to conserve water. So that was just bad luck. But otherwise, I have 4 things to report from the conference that I thought were noteworthy. One, I'll be very brief and discreet about it. There was a company that was looking at Port Colborne for a major investment. The mayor invited myself, Councillor Baggio, and the CAO to meet with them. I will just say that it went extremely well. I think a 1-hour meeting turned into 2.5 hours. I think they were quite impressed with the fact that we showed up at their offices, and look forward to them moving forward. So that was an added bonus that they were there and we happened to be there. So thanks to the mayor for including Mark and I in a discussion that he, I'm sure, has on a regular basis. I was able to meet again this year, representative from the FCM Green Funds, introduced her to Steve. I know they had quite a chat about consolidating some of our projects. We invited her to Port Colborne, which he will do in the fall. But in the meantime, I think Steve has set up a Zoom or Teams meeting with them. So hopefully with bundling them and having a actual face-to-face contact there, we'll be able to get more of that green fund than maybe we would have otherwise. Third was a vendor that we bumped into called Atmosphere. They're out of Montreal, and it just happened to be that they're opening an office in Toronto. They do some unique public place playgrounds, washrooms, solar-based, and it's all based on a European New Age kind of style. And as luck would have it, I invited the mayor over and the CAO and Steve, and the mayor was going to be in Montreal the following week. So Atmosphere invited him to tour some playgrounds. I know the company loved our location, the fact we're at a parks master plan, 2 big playground projects on the road, and tried to convince them to make Port Colborne the showplace for their product in Ontario. Let the mayor speak to down the road how that conversation went, or if they're bought into a major discount and us being their showplace, but hopefully that develops into something that we get some huge discount. And finally, on the last day, and a very surprising one, I attended a AI seminar. It was like the last 2 hours of the show. And it was one of the most interesting seminars and networking opportunities I've seen in a long time. I know we're looking at doing some things with software programs, particularly with the CBO's office. This opened a whole new opportunity, I think, for us. The city of Kelowna was there, and I had a chance to talk to Mr. Gilchrist, they're the city manager. They have the most advanced AI projects dating back 4 years in Canada, and they've agreed to network with us and talk anything we want about AI, and including a lady from Bloomberg Philanthropy who does AI consultations for free with major cities. She's agreed to speak to us. So I'm hoping that this will be a jump ahead on AI and perhaps save us some money down the road instead of doing sort of one-off software programs where it all comes under the AI envelope through Microsoft. So I'll pass that on to AI and the director. And although it wasn't the best conference I've attended from FCM, hopefully it will provide some fruit. And if one or more of these hit, hopefully it was well worth it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have. If there's any questions.
Thanks, Counselor. And just to go further with the company that I met in Montreal at the, we toured 3 facilities, and one was a major downtown municipal park that had all kinds of amenities, but the specific product that they offered was in one section of it, which was pretty amazing. They've since contacted Mr. Long. They have set up a date to come to Port Colborne, so they will be coming to Port Colborne. I think it's July 4th. Oh, August now? Okay, tentatively it was July. So they're looking at August to come to Port. So with the work that Mr. Long's department is doing, we'll certainly show them what we have available here and see where that takes us. But it was well worth adding it into my my first day in Montreal a week and a half ago. So really cool stuff. And we basically what they talked about, the discounts did sound pretty good, but we'll wait till they see our facilities and then go from there. So other than that, that's it. Go ahead, Steve.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, I just wanted to do one update to Councillor Bruno's update regarding the Lions Field. So I previously mentioned that it was $96,000 of grants from the region. The remainder was actually through gas tax. So Director Bowles was just able to confirm that quickly, and the remainder was through gas tax. So it was fully funded through grants.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bodnar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Bruno. Can you just tell the viewing public what FCM is?
Oh, thank you, Councillor. Yes, Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So basically there's political CAOs, vendors from across the country descend on one city each year. And it really gives us a broad perspective of not just the Ontario scene, which we're used to in municipal world and reading various things in our inboxes. I found it very interesting. This was actually the largest attendance. Maybe it was because it was the second one after COVID, and everybody had sort of gotten their bearings. Yeah, I've always been a big fan of that because of the breadth of it. So, yeah, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, I believe there was about 3,000 delegates this time descended on Calgary.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, you heard Councillor Bruno's reports. I was there also, and I can't top his report. He went through pretty well everything. There was a couple of really good workshops that we attended, though. Sustainable land use planning. One of them I found pretty interesting was attracting and retaining municipal talent, which we get our talent here, we want to keep them. And talking about lowering carbon emissions, and I know a report's coming on later tonight about our carbon emissions, and I think it was a pretty good conference, first one I've ever been to, and it was definitely worth it, Mr. Mayor. One concern I have, I've talked to bylaw a few times, emails, and I popped in there, and I know our CAO has a report. Basically what it is regarding light pollution or nuisance lighting in our municipality. When somebody builds some sort of erection of a building and then they have outside lighting in it, sheds too much light on the neighboring properties, and there's not really a bylaw that we can take care of stuff like that. And I know in planning department, some of them have to do some lighting survey or something for a commercial, but nothing really for a residential. I know we did have one on Stanley Street beside the environmentally protected area from the NPCA. Had it with our planning department. The light could not shed onto the environmentally protected area, but with people's building decks more longer towards their fence lines now and putting lighting out there, I thought it was important to have something. We're not the only ones that have this. There's other municipalities in Ontario that have this already, and I guess I'll give it to the CAO to highlight our conversation.
And through your worship to Councillor Bagu, it is a known issue in the city, light pollution, and light pollution refers to when somebody's using light to illuminate their own property, but it's in fact illuminating beyond the boundaries of their property and sort of disturbing the quiet enjoyment of a neighboring property. And when I say quiet enjoyment, I don't mean silence, noise-wise. I mean the ability to enjoy your property free from any kind of interference. And so it is an issue. Councillor Bagu has said it perfectly. I feel like I don't even need to say it. We do have some control on commercial properties because they usually have a site plan agreement, and we can put wording in a site plan agreement, and usually do. I would depend on the property, on a commercial or industrial or multi-residential property where we say that there is some rules around lighting and disturbing neighboring properties. So you can imagine some kind of use that wants extra security, like a warehouse or a storage locker business where they want to light doorways for safety or for security. If you're a residential house next door to it, you don't want that coming over your fence, shining in your bedroom. You can't sleep because it looks like it's daytime all night long. However, one house to another house, we don't have any rules that regulate that. And in fact, in some cities and towns, it's considered a civil matter. It's not very pleasant to hear from your municipality that the staff and council there expect you to personally sue your neighbor to get them to change their light. People are looking for the city to help regulate that, and our bylaw staff does have plans to bring a bylaw, or at least do the research around the appetite for a bylaw among council and among the public to help to regulate this. It is in the queue. I say this not to try to get council to feel sorry for bylaw staff, but there is a long queue. We are working on lodging, as you know, short-term rentals, a little bit of stuff around animals, dog tags, and so on, but it is right there in the queue, and I expect that we'll be able to, we're doing a little bit of work on the noise bylaw. Some of our public commentary around the noise bylaw is leaning towards status quo and not doing a deep dive into the noise bylaw, so it'll be up to council, but that could save us some time, and hopefully we can get to it probably at the end of the year, before the end of the year or at the start of next year, and have something before council to help regulate this use.
I'm good with that reply, Mr. Mayor. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Aquilina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I would like to do is add on to Councillor Hoyle's request for NRP. Now that Sun Retreats is open and school years are ending, there's the increase of volume of traffic down Empire and Highway 3 in Wilhelm. So if some monitoring could be done, that'd be appreciated.
Thanks, Councillor. I'll take that to our staff sergeant and also have him touch base with the OPP with regards to Highway 3. Okay, is that it? All set? Okay, thank you.
You didn't do staff.
Not yet.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, I did skip staff, didn't I?
Yes.
Staff reports, Acting Clerk, Mr. CAO. Go ahead.
Sure, thank you, and thanks for noting I will be the acting clerk for today's meeting because our clerk is away on a much-deserved vacation and a family wedding. So take it easy on me. I'm trying to make notes and be the CAO at the same time. The two things I'd like to update council on in particular are that work continues on the Fire Services Committee. There has been a meeting recently hosted in Port Colborne and chaired by our Port Colborne council member. At current time, the plans for another joint meeting of both council is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, July 17th. At nighttime, both clerks' departments are working on pinning that down, but for council's information, you might want to put a pin in that day. The second thing I want to update council on is the lodging bylaw. When we last met, or when we last had that item before council, it was deferred because of some legal issues that were brought up by, number one, the proponent of the only, we believe, lodging house in Port Colborne, as well as by the Executive Director, CEO of Port Cares. The clerk staff and myself immediately went to legal to try to get those issues resolved in hopes that we would have that back before council this evening. Unfortunately, the schedule of the city solicitor is such that we won't even be able to meet until after today's meeting to discuss those couple of issues that were raised by those parties, and we expect to have answers. My vision is to present a staff report that sort of lists the issues that were raised, lists the staff or legal response to the issue, such as this isn't an issue and this is the reason why, or this has been addressed and the draft bylaw has been updated to reflect addressing it, all for the second meeting in July, which is July 24th. So that lodging bylaw, we hope to have back to council by July 24th.
Thank you. Mr. Szapowski.
Yes, through you, your worship. So we're happy to report that the Neff Street storm outlet reconstruction is well underway, with the majority of the pipe already being installed. Over the next couple of weeks, the contractor will be working to complete the final connection at the weir itself, and then begin all the restorations within the area as well. So the location has experienced some localized flooding over quite a few years now, and we're happy to say that that'll be resolved in the near future.
Great, thank you. Mr. Bowles, anything to report? Mr. Long? Okay.
Should have said July 23rd. That council meeting is July 23rd.
July 23rd council meeting, that'll come forward? Sorry, okay, good, thank you. Okay, and there's no staff online. So we're now going to items of consideration. So item 8.1, which we have a presentation. Just pull that up here. So it's our 2024 asset management plan. The recommendation is that Corporate Services Department Report 2024-133 be received, that the asset management plan AMPS in Appendix B of Corporate Services Report 2024-133 be approved. And welcome. How are you? Good. You're going to do our presenting. Just press the red button there and go ahead.
Hello, Mayor and members of Council. I'm Jen Gross, and I work for GEI Consultants, and I'm here to present your 2024 Asset Management Plan. So I'm going to briefly go over the regulation for why we're doing this asset management plan, and then talk to you about the asset management plan process, just so that you have an understanding of all the work that goes into this document. As you, I'm sure, can see, it's a very large document. And then talk to you about the scope of the asset management plan, the state of the infrastructure, and the results of the asset management plan. So in 2018, OREG 588/17 came into effect. So it spoke to all of these different steps that municipalities must do to report on asset management. So you were required to put in an asset management policy in 2019, which the city has completed. In 2022, you completed your core asset management plan. As part of the requirements for July 1st, 2024, you had to report on all of your assets. So parks, fleet, anything that wasn't included in your previous asset management plan. So as per this plan, you have to report on your current levels of service. So I'll speak to you a little bit more about what that means. And then we are also going to be doing another phase of this project to update this plan for 2025, which will require you to set targets for your proposed levels of service. So overall, the asset management plan process is, first, there is a state of the infrastructure. So this is a total valuation of everything you own and a summary of what you own. And then we also report on the condition of your assets and then an average age as well. So there's certain regulated things that we have to report on about your assets, which are included. So the plan has been broken down by an asset category. So you'll see different chapters. So they will have all these different sections for state of the infrastructure, levels of service, and life cycle management within those chapters. And then we pull it all together with a financial strategy and an improvement and monitoring plan. So as part of the 2024 AMP, we need to report on your current levels of service. So how do you rate your services right now, and what is your current performance? As part of the 2025 regulation, we need to set targets for your levels of service. The life cycle management strategy is really, asset management is trying to report on the full life cycle of your assets. So everything that you need to consider throughout an asset's whole life. So the planning for that asset, engineering, design, the construction of that asset, the maintenance of that asset, any rehab activities. So really planning out and strategizing what needs to be done to this asset and how much does that cost. We also then do as part of the life cycle management strategy and your financing strategy, we look at how much all these activities cost and then figure out what you need to be spending on your assets. And then the improvement and monitoring plan is simply, there's always room for improvement in asset management. Asset management, there's always, like, as you mature through your processes, your procedures that you have for asset management and get improved information, there's always another step for how we can improve how you forecast for your assets. So the scope of the 2024 asset management plan, again, is all of your assets. So you have rate-funded assets, which is wastewater, water, and your storm assets. And then the remaining assets are your transportation, emergency services, fleet, facilities, information technology, natural assets, and your library. So this is how they've been categorized for this plan. So it does go, it's not exactly what your departments are in the municipality, it's by the asset type. So you'll see a category or a chapter for each of these categories within the asset management plan. So in total, at this point in time, based on the information we have on your assets, you have $1.34 billion of assets, with transportation making up the bulk of that. I don't know if people want to ask questions throughout the presentation or wait till the end.
Well, why don't we wait to the end, only because we have Councillor Bruno, which because of the presentation is not on the screen. So let's wait to the end and I'll go to questions.
Okay.
Thanks. Thanks, Councillor.
So in terms of state of your infrastructure, so we are required to provide you an overview of the valuation of your assets, also the condition of your assets. So if you see to the left, if you put all your assets together, you have about 14.83 assets in very poor condition. So the different colors mean the dark red is very poor, all the way to the dark green, which is very good. And the gray is anything that we don't know yet what the condition is, which we will, if you go through the asset management plan, the different categories, you'll see which assets specifically have those unknown categories. And then if you look to the left, or to the right, sorry, you have the breakdown of the different chapters of your assets and the condition profiles for each of your assets. So when we talk about levels of service, again, in this 2024 AMP, we're only reporting on your current performance. So levels of service is really trying to make you think about what is the services your assets are providing and making that connection, because you own assets to provide a service, and that's ultimately why you have them. That's why you spend money on them. And if you don't maintain those assets, that affects the services that you provide to your residents. And it's talking about asset management, it's really trying to find that balance between cost, risk, and levels of service. So everybody wants the Mercedes and the best of the services, but that comes at a cost. But then if you lower that cost and you don't provide as much of a service, then you're also increasing your risk, because if assets fail, you could potentially be putting the public in danger. So it's really finding that perfect balance of right level of service, risk, and cost. So your current performance for your assets. So again, we are only reporting on your current level of service for this asset management plan. So we've gone through all your metrics that were used from the last plan, and many of them are regulated through the regulation. So we have to report on specific metrics for your core infrastructure. For the remaining assets, we've worked with staff. We've had workshops about what those metrics should look like. We've looked at your strategic priorities. We've developed those metrics to speak to what council's strategic priorities are. So you'll see an example. This is from your storm system. So the ones under regulatory, so those are the regulated metrics. We have to report on these metrics. And then the city defined one is your percentage of stormwater management system designed to current standards. So then we've set this. You will see the current performance for all the metrics that have been chosen within the document under each asset category. As part of the 2025 plan, we then have to set a target to all of these metrics and figuring out what the cost is to reach that target. And then also we have to speak to, is the target achievable? What activities need to be done to reach your target? So again, as part of the plan right now, you will only just see your current performance. So the life cycle management strategy, we run, as part of the analysis for the asset management plan, we run some forecasts. So the first one is to maintain your current levels of service. So if you strictly just wanted to keep your assets in approximately the same condition they are now, how much would that cost you? Then we have developed an anticipated budget, which has been, we run the forecast to see what the impact of using this anticipated budget on the condition profile of your assets, and then an infrastructure needs assessment. So this has really gone through all the life cycle strategies that have been developed with staff. What activities do you need to be doing to your assets? What will the condition be if you follow these infrastructure needs? So you will see for each of these forecast scenarios in each of the chapters, you will see what those condition profiles look like, and then we also compile them. So some of the forecast assumptions, the asset management plan is very much a living document. As you get better information, we pull that information in when you have updated condition assessments, when you do master plans, any more available information we look at and we put into this plan. That includes looking at your replacement values, especially the last few years. Everybody's, I'm sure, realized the cost of a truck or doing any work on your house has gotten extremely expensive. The same thing has happened for the municipality. So we do our best to make sure that these values are representative of what you're seeing in the real world, and that when you are using these forecasts and you're budgeting, you have realistic expectations of what things cost. All figures are stated in 2024, and the infrastructure needs forecast is really looking at renewal activities, rehab activities, and replacement needs. All other life cycle activities like operations and maintenance, non-infrastructure activities, we assume what you're doing is enough, but that is another level of analysis that would be recommended to be completed. So for the anticipated budget, the budget has been developed to address your infrastructure needs so that you can see, if you follow the budget as it's outlined within this plan, how it's going to improve the condition of your assets. So the sources that have been used to develop that budget is your 2024 budget, your water financial plan that's been approved, and then your wastewater financial plan. The anticipated budget has been developed for each asset category with the intention of increasing funding to address the infrastructure gap and leveraging debt where needed. So there are some planned catch-up years and capital investments between 2025 and 2031, and where needed, debt will be leveraged. So this is for all of your assets compiled. Within the document, you will see them broken down a little bit. You'll see a similar graph for all your individual asset categories, plus you'll see the compiled versions of these graphs in the financial strategy. So if you look at the dotted blue line at the bottom, so if you just wanted to keep maintaining your assets at the current level they are now, so keep them in the current condition they are now, it is actually lower than what the anticipated budget is. So the whole intent of that anticipated budget is to improve the condition of your assets and continue on all the hard work that you guys have already been putting into your assets over the previous years. So you'll see the solid black line is the anticipated budget, and then there's still a little bit of a gap to meet your infrastructure needs as per those life cycle strategies that have been developed with staff. So you'll see this in the bars, that portion of the red, in red in 2024, that includes backlogs. So that's any work that should have already been completed, whether it's because your asset is past its service life, it's in very poor condition, but there's a whole list of activities that have been compiled that are making up that big jump. So we do average that out. So the average of all the red portion and then your operations and maintenance is your dotted red line. So we want to show what the impact of following the infrastructure needs is. So your current condition profile is at the top, and then by 2043, if you are following your infrastructure needs and all the life cycle strategies that have been developed, you'll see the improved performance of your assets in the lower bar. And we will continue. Again, this is a living document. As we get better information on your assets, as we get updated condition assessments, as we get master plans, all of this information, its intent is to keep feeding into this document and keep giving you an updated snapshot in time based on the most up-to-date information. So there's different strategies to handle your infrastructure gap and what needs to be done. So a lot of the non-financial strategies, so you will see a different scenario next year when we do the 2025 plan, which is setting your levels of service targets. So that will impact what those gaps are. Continued asset prioritization, long-term planning, community engagement, and advocacy. You guys are doing a really great job in talking to all those different funding sources. That's what you should be doing. Keep doing all that stuff, and that's always so important, and that will help you. And then some of the financial strategies are leveraging reserve and reserve funds, debt financing, revenue increases, and an infrastructure levy, user fees and charges, growth, and then any possible divestitures. So some of the opportunities for continual improvement for your asset management plan would be doing your master servicing plan. So that gives you better information about what you need to do to plan for growth. Asset management maturity assessment, just to look at how are we doing asset management right now? What do we want to prioritize and continue to enhance? Establish asset management system and roadmaps. Update business processing, develop asset management business processes, updating your information systems and asset data improvements, and then integration of asset management within your budget process so that this exercise is a lot clearer, and then you're continuing to have that asset management conversation during every budget. So you do have a compliant asset management plan for 2024, and then the next phase is due by July 1st next year, so you will see a 2025 version of this plan. And the next steps upon council approval and endorsement, the plan does get posted to the city's website. That's part of the regulation that we're required to make it available to the public, and then we'll start work on the 2025 plan.
Great, thank you, Jen, appreciate that. Could you bring Councillor Bruno back on too? Thanks. There he is. So I'm going to go to Councillor Bagu, then Councillor Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Jen, great report, Jen. I don't know if you wrote the whole thing, but it was heavy duty reading over 200 pages, and I had to read quite a few pages over again and over to understand it. But the reasoning for this whole report by the Ontario government is
partly this is also for them to kind of
governments to give them more money to fix their infrastructure. That's the way I take this from the government.
Through you, Mayor, to the councillor. The Ontario government really has realized that municipalities are struggling to pay for all their assets, and they're realizing municipalities are getting further and further behind. So partly this is also for them to kind of analyze where the money's going, when they are doling out funding resources and stuff. You are required to have this plan so that when you go for after some of that funding, they do require you to have this plan complete. So it's kind of a mix where they kind of want a better understanding of where municipalities are struggling the most and be able to compare municipalities to municipality, but also to help. So this plan is, staff's communication tool to council of where we're at with your assets, but it's also your communication tool to the public for them to understand where these increases are coming from, what is it doing for them, why it's so important, because we can't just keep kicking this plan down the road and or this problem down the road. So it really is a communication tool to help everybody understand where we're at and where the priorities lay.
Councillor?
Great answer. Thank you, Jen. Just one question about your report. For somebody watching on your television, you're saying transportation is Port Colborne's biggest asset, but I read in the report what transportation actually is. It's not trucks, right? So maybe you can explain exactly what transportation is for people watching.
Through you, Mayor. So transportation, there's a fleet and asset category. Transportation's your road network, street lighting, anything within that right of way, your sidewalks, all that kind of stuff. So yes, transportation is not the trucks, it's actually the stuff that carries the trucks.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. I'd agree with Councillor Baggio. Excellent presentation, putting it together in terms people can understand. I think you actually answered one of my questions. So this report assumes no discontinuances. So this is, not mothballing buildings or, going to one side of the street, sidewalks, all that kind of stuff. This is full straight on if we were to maintain all of our current assets. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, yes, this is just if you want to maintain all your current assets, and it is assuming you want to keep all your current assets.
Thank you. And also I assume that this does not account for any grants that we might get on the way. I mean, I view grants as great. They get us there faster, but they're one-offs and you can't put them into your baseline budget. So would that be correct? It does not assume any grants in the future.
Through you, Mayor, it is only assuming the ones that are steady and that you get every year. It's not assuming that you will receive anything in the future outside of your regular ones, like OCIF and gas tax.
Sure. Great, thank you. And the last question, I know you've alluded to how well we've done. I know as a council and staff, we're not about punting things down the road and getting on with it. But, one of the things that is helpful is context. So I don't know if it's for you, Mr. Bowles, Mr. Sapowski, but where would we sort of rank in the realm of Niagara as far as getting on with taking this infrastructure deficit seriously and doing the good work as you described of like increasing at 20% a year? I just would like some context as when you're talking to taxpayers, you can punt things down the road and lower taxes or keep them steady, or you can get on with it and not leave it to the next generation. But I appreciate if you could give us some context.
Through you, Mayor. There's no metric that really can compare municipality to municipality. I can say Port Colborne has done an amazing job making sure that this financial situation is addressed and taking an aggressive approach to make sure that this problem is not getting kicked down the road. I would say you guys are, really trying to tackle the infrastructure gap, and the way that we've developed this plan and making sure that that funding is planned out for and that we're addressing it. You're doing updated condition assessments. You're spending the money that needs to be spent to get the information you need to make the right decisions. You're doing a lot of the right things. I don't want to put some kind of rank against all the other municipalities, but I would say, hands down, you guys are definitely doing the right things and what you need to be doing.
Yes, I'm not one to let go of something when I have it, so I don't know if the CAO or the directors, Bowles or Shapowski, you guys talk and meet with your counterparts across the region. Can any of you want to take a stab at where we're at?
Gentlemen?
I guess through the mayor to the councillor, the area treasurers have been talking about this, and I do know as of right now, I just pulled it up as you were talking there, councillor, we are in the upper quartile, but I think what I think our consultant and our plan identifies is we need to keep investing. So for the last 4 years, council has been increasing the capital budget in that section of the budget by 20% a year, 5% related to construction inflation, 15% because we're trying to make up and deal with the deferred maintenance. We have to keep that going, and this plan shows that if we keep that going till about 2030 or 2031, we will have a fully funded capital program to be able to maintain the current infrastructure. And I think what Jen has pointed out today is there is one more element of capital planning to come forward, so there'll be one more report. And that report won't come to council, just to point out, as a fed to, like, it's done, right? Like, here's all the information, because this report comes, here's all the factual information, and you approve it because it's fact. The next one, council's going to be asked to comment on because we have to set the service levels. This funding further, because you may find that you want to improve your service levels. There was an example in the one slide that talked about being prepared for a flood, for example, and you might want to change that. And if we change those, that too may increase the cost and may mean that we have to keep pushing the capital funding going out. So to council, maybe a longer answer than anticipated. We are on the high side of our investment, but this report, just like every report every municipality has got, shows that we all have to continue to invest, and the percentage of our budget that goes to capital is going to.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you to staff, excellent presentation. And I guess it's scary in some regards to see where we are and where we have to get to. And I just talked to the treasurer earlier. The third quarter tax notices came out, and some people had contacted me about the increases. With a 20% increase going forward, is there any guesstimate in real dollars on an average what people are going to see on the increase on their tax bill? Just this is great knowledge for us, and we can understand it. But the people out there, the only thing they understand is when they open that tax bill and there's this increase. How am I going to afford to pay that? So the affordability index, for me, this is long overdue. But the affordability word pops up for the residents that we have now, with no growth, with stagnant growth in the last number of years yet to come. But just for the people that are here now, what can they expect to see in the coming years, if you can put a figure to it?
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor, it's a great question, because 20% sounds like a big number, but that's that percentage, that's that portion of the budget that's growing by 20. So 20% growth on the capital translate to about a 3% tax increase. But then, like, the tax increase doesn't necessarily be 3%, because there could be, well, there's other components of the city, heat, hydro, all these things that we have to pay for. So the tax increase becomes above the 3, but This translates into a 3% increase, and that's why over the last 4 years, as council's approved its budget, greater than half of the budget increase every year was always for capital. So when you open up your tax bill and you see that increase, last year, or this year, almost 60% of that was because you're addressing the infrastructure needs of roads, water, and wastewater. The majority of your tax increase is going directly to capital. Very little is actually going to operations. The operations have been kept at inflate, like the 2% inflation, not the inflation we've experienced, but around the 2% period for the last 4 years.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Brian. Do we split that out? Because I never look at my tax bill because my wife looks at all that. But is it split out so people know this is what we're setting aside, this portion of your increase year over, so that it's not us spending the money here, there, and everywhere. It's targeted. It's going to be targeted spending next year, down the road, years to come, and that's why we're doing this. I think if people understand where the allocation of funding that we're asking them for and taking from them, if we explain it to them, this is where we are and this is where we have to get to. This isn't just something that we're doing because we feel like it. This is a need. And this is why we're budgeting, the 3% increase every year, because we need to get to this level. I'm not sure if people fully understand that, no matter how many times we sit and meet and talk about it here, that message doesn't seem to translate to the general public when they're looking at their tax bills and go, I went up again, how am I going to afford this? So maybe if we did have better communication and let people know, because when I look at the numbers that are in the report, sometimes I get scared of it and go, how much, right? But it's needed. And if people would understand that it's gradually we're going to get there by following this plan, because I can't imagine the amount of work that went into this as the roadmap to get where we need to be. But we just have to explain to people, this is why we need the funding, is to get there. So if you want to kind of answer
You
that.
should ask your wife, because in her recent tax bill, which I just opened yesterday, was a great sheet outlining how our money's spent. So, Mr. Bowles, if you want to answer that question.
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor, I actually think it was Councillor Wells, and there was a couple others from the community that brought one to us last year and said we'd like this format. So last year was our first year sending out the format to explain where your tax dollars go. We rolled that this year and did the same format. But I hear what you're saying, because this being the second year of the document, it didn't necessarily show that other areas actually came down in the city. And capital is where all the money went to. So I do think that our document, and I appreciate the mayor saying it's a very clear document, easier to understand, but you don't actually see what changed year to year. And that's what we've heard from a couple residents recently. So we will look to adjust the document to more strongly emphasize that council is holding the line on operating costs and trying to come up with innovative ways to come up with new revenues. But this capital deficit that everybody's inherited is where the new tax dollars are going. And that's where council spent the last 4 years. All of it has gone into this capital area.
Councillor?
That's great. Thank you. And thank you for the presentation.
Great, thanks. Further questions? Seeing none, if I could have Councillors Bruno and Bagu move the recommendation. All those in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Jen. Appreciate it. Next up is item 8.2. Is the Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan for 2024-2029, or through to 2029. The recommendation is that Public Works Department Report 2024-137 be received, and that the Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan attached as Appendix A be approved. I have Councillors Bagu and Bruno asking questions on this, so it's Cassandra that's taking those. Councillor Bagu.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, I just lost everything. Story of my life. Anyways, Mr. Mayor, on page 18, you have some very, very aggressive dates. It's 2024, 2025 for, like, say, heat pumps in different city buildings. I know it's you have to put some date there, but those ones are really scare people because they're going to see a great big increase. Like when I first read it, I thought it was this year. I don't remember voting for anything that included that cost for heat pumps. I do agree with we need heat pumps, 100%. I do agree. And so can you give a little bit better explanation on the dating? Thanks.
For sure. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So those dates are absolutely under review. They're just placeholders right now for the purpose of the report and some of the calculations that went into it. So the measures that are proposed in this ECDM and Energy Conservation and Demand Management Plan are items that staff will be further reviewing and looking into. So these are very ambitious. So council has set an ambitious strategic plan target too. So the ECDM went sort of a step beyond just our regular compliance requirement for this to recommend and to sort of strategize on some of the measures for us to further investigate. So those dates are not committed. We are not committed to those. Some of the items we're starting to look at and we're reviewing with our facilities team right now. And then this will feed into a city's actionable plan for this too. So this is also sort of a living document. There's a requirement to just have this completed by July 1st, and then we're going to further review all of these recommended proposed measures and further look into those. So the dates, that's why it says proposed implementation year under review. There is some language about that too, but it's not as clear. So we will update this. We want all of the city's plans to sort of be in alignment. And so we're reviewing all of these options to look at, even if some of them are even feasible and realistic, and also reviewing the cost of those programs. And then we would bring forward any recommended facility upgrades or retrofits to council in the 2025 budget year for 2025. So yes, these we're not committed to those ones at this time.
Councillor?
Thank you. I know some people on the Environmental Advisory Committee would just love to see us put heat pumps in every building within 2 months from today. Maybe you could tell me, upcoming budget for next year, will there be something in it that's in this report?
So I can speak to that a little bit. So we are working internally in the Public Works Department with the facilities staff, and they are reviewing also our building condition assessments, some of these proposed measures. They've also been doing other feasibility studies that are ongoing. We're looking at grants, those sort of things. All of that will feed into the recommendations that will come to council. So I can't speak to the specifics right now. We're still sort of just information gathering. We're working through our budgets actually this week and next week, this month, and our facilities staff will propose some in the upcoming budget.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Last question. The city's building condition assessments, are they up to date? Every time I hear something, they say, well, they're still doing them, So I just don't know the status of them.
Yes, through you, your worship, I'll take that one. So we do have building condition assessments that were completed in all city facilities over the last couple of years. Staff, as Cassandra mentioned, we're not only going through the ECDM, but we're also going through all of those building condition assessments to put a fulsome plan together for all the city of Port Colborne facilities. So we're taking those into account at the same time. The overall plan is to have a full 5-year plan, similar to what we presented with the INS on a facility basis by the fall. But we will be expediting the ones for 2025 at this time for review during the budget submission this year. So we do have the BCAs, and those are going to be pretty much the lifeblood of what our future planning is going to be for city facilities.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Great report, I appreciate it, and Mr. CAO, our reports are definitely getting a lot better to council, so thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruno.
Thank you. Councillor Baggio asked basically all that I wanted to ask. I just wanted to add one thing. So through you to Cassandra. So although we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions, we're really not talking though here. Well, I guess it's how you defined assets. In the previous plan, I think assets was fleet. So for example, here, I don't believe we're talking about if we green our fleet, you know, your electrical bill at the public works yard may go up because you're putting in charging stations and you're greening the fleet and you're getting rid of greenhouse gas emissions. But this actually doesn't speak to that asset, right? The fleet and savings on fuel and greenhouse gas emissions. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. That is correct. So this plan has a pretty narrow scope of just looking at the facilities that we heat and cool. And it's not a fulsome review of our fleet, greenhouse gases, and those. So the city is collecting that information and is looking at that data. And we will have some more information about that. We're absolutely looking at our green fleet plan as well with our facilities and fleet division. And so they're working on that. We are moving forward with some EV charging stations. So all of that will come together. This is just one input. This is just looking at the facilities specifically. And because we have to track our our heating and cooling costs, then we can look at the trend. So if we are putting in EV charging stations, we can see the impact on our billing from that too, the impact on consumption and the payback for that too. So we will continue to review that. And, you know, to meet the strategic plan target, we're not just looking at facilities. We will look at green fleet. We're looking at other initiatives, tree planting, things like that, and that will all feed into that. So we're just bringing it all together now.
Great. Thank you for the clarification. That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. One thing about the green fleet, we learned that Steve was with us at FCM with their funding available, and we talked about different things like electric Zambonis and electric vehicles and how their program can help fund those. But we've got to look at more than just, we talked about Zamboni to the lady, but it's got to be more than just that. So if we're talking pickup trucks, building department vehicles and things like that, so whatever heavy equipment that may go electric. So in talking to Steve, we've got to look at those plans because funding is available. So we may as well take advantage of anything that we can. You know, as Brian said, if we're going to increase by 20% our spend per year in our assets, if we can offset that, we can actually spend more, but it's through the granting, through the Green Fund or federal or provincial programs that are out there. So appreciate that. Brian?
Through yourself, Mayor, to Council, just to maybe add to the conversation and set expectations for when the budget comes. I fully expect that all the work that Public Works is doing in this area is not going to line up with the budget, because a lot of the grants that we're applying for are like, they're just the timing. So we may, I guess just to put forward, we may end up with in the budget a couple placeholders, and then council will have to make the decision on investing those dollars at a later date because of the timing of how some of the grants work. So just setting the expectation of the dance or the steps to get to the approvals here.
Great. Further questions? Councillor Hoyle?
Oh, sorry.
Through the mayor. My only question on here was that I know it says only investigating. With all the finance that we've put in to finally fix the roof at the Val, or would it be more, I've seen a few things online about light poles becoming a source of solar and feeding into buildings as maybe an alternative than touching that roof again and then having leaks or an off spot, like you see some of the farm, an off spot where they put a big solar panel out. You know, I say the far end of the last baseball diamond that has nothing. I'm just thinking of an alternative versus touching that roof and going through all that again.
If I can go to our CAO, it's funny you bring that up, and I'll let the CAO answer this.
Sure, just through your worship to Councillor Hoyle, it's interesting you should mention that, and the mayor is chuckling a bit because just yesterday we had our third or fourth meeting with a vendor who's proposing some, not just roof-mounted solar units, but also ground-mounted solar panels in parking lots and in other areas where there's not otherwise a land use that it would be interfering with. So we don't want to use good land for solar panels, but in, for example, a parking lot, you can do solar that is above the parking stalls, and in fact, a fair bit bigger than the streetlights, but ground mounted and high enough to park under, safe enough to drive under, and so on. We are doing a feasibility study. Some of the staff in Public Works are right in the middle of a feasibility study where we can sort of see what the payback period is for the hydro savings, because typically, although not always, this would feed back into a building and offset the hydro consumption. So in the case of the arena, where there's compressors making ice, in the case of the Public Works facility, where there's many, many people working, City Hall, and so on, computers plugged in, servers plugged in, we don't want to sell energy back into the grid, and sometimes you can't, and there's not capacity to do that, but it would offset what we buy. And just the same way that when I first came to the city, council had approved an LED retrofit for streetlights where there was a payback period. We think there would be a payback period here where council could meet two objectives. One is to offset the cost of hydroelectricity consumption. The other one is to meet the council's strategic plan objective of reducing the carbon footprint and approaching some form of carbon neutrality. So let us complete that feasibility study. We'll get something back in front of council. The vendor that came here has been fully advised that when we do something, it would have to be through a competitive process that considers every vendor in the market. We can't tap someone on the shoulder and offer them a contract because it has to be a competitive process under our procurement policy. And so they're aware of that. They still think that they would be the vendor of record by competing for the thing, for the contract. But we'll do feasibility first and then some kind of a project plan second. And I see some of my Public Works staff here nodding their heads, so it sounds like we're all on the same page.
Yes, as long as it seems that the Val is our highest area to work on.
Yeah.
So as long as we knock it down, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe I'm remembering wrong, and probably am. When we built Valet, didn't we look at putting solar panels up, but the roof isn't designed to have solar panels on it? Or am I, like I said, remembering that wrong? I thought we had discussed it at one point.
Well, I think we did. I don't know if depending on what you put up there, it does depend on the strength of the roof. We've talked about that. I think at the time was, I mean, you're going back to basically 2010, 2008, 2010 when we discussed all this. The technology today isn't like it is today because it changes so quickly. The fact, I think, was the cost back then, and there wasn't the programs back then like there is today with regards to how you feed it back to the grid and how you can get paid for that, how it offsets your own electrical bills and things like that. But what I recall, I think, it was a cost factor within that facility that, you know, when you got to cut some things out, that was one of the ones we cut out. So, but the program that the vendor talked to us about, actually, you don't even need to touch the roof. This parking lot thing was pretty cool. It was, so.
Just when I saw it in the report, something triggered in my mind. I don't know why it does that, but it did. So, okay, thanks.
Okay. Further questions? Okay. To move the recommendation, if I could have Councillors Bagu and Bruno, all in favor? And that's carried. (8.5) is noise variance request 175 King Street, the Belmont. Recommendation that Community Safety and Enforcement Department Report 2024-132 be received. That the Belmont Bar and Grill be granted a permit to exempt them from Section 4, Subsection 3 of Bylaw 4588/119/04 with the following terms and conditions. That a conditional noise variance be approved for the period starting Fridays in June to Friday, September the 2nd from 8 p.m. to 11:59 p.m. for a DJ with equipment and live bands being able to amplify music, with the condition that if staff receives complaints from the public about excessive noise, staff will work with the Belmont management to ensure that the Belmont addresses and alleviates the noise concerns. In the event of complaints if the complaints cannot diminish, staff would rescind the noise variance permit. The permit is applicable only to the production, reproduction, and amplification of sound in connection with these events. If I could have Councillor Bagu and Hoyle move this, I'll go to Councillor Bagu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, first of all, I'm in favor of this request, and after reading it and sort of analyzing it, that staff provided a public notice on June 5th to the public, and here it is on the 25th or whatever it's coming to council. And I just thought, would it be better if we delegate this to power to staff rather than having to come to council every year? There's nothing wrong with, if it's approved, a notice gets sent out to each councilor saying we approve this for this place here, just like councilors get all the building permits once a month. In case somebody calls me about the Belmont Hotel, I can say, well, there is a permit already. I got notified by bylaw or the CAO, whoever. But I think just having them have to apply to council every year is sort of a pain for everybody involved, for them, plus our clerks and our staff, because I know it does take time. Somebody walks in the door, wants to go to council, you can't get to council within 20 days usually. We're protected by the staff most of the time. Not all the time, actually. So, Mr. Mayor, I don't know how we could do that. The other councils want to pitch in about the CAO.
I'll go to the CAO because he's here with regards to bylaws too, answering their questions, so he can put some context to this. But before we get there, I don't know of any complaints that have come in. I know that question was asked last year when this came to us. I think this is our third year doing this. And last year, staff said there were no complaints at all, like for 2022, and then now we're talking about 2023. I didn't receive any complaints. I don't know if any councillors, specifically Ward 1. The last time I talked to staff, there weren't complaints that came in about this. So it has worked over the last couple of years that we've done this, but I do agree with you, Councillor, to give some delegated authority to staff. Mr. CAO?
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Bagu, I appreciate raising the question because this is something that we talked about in the preparation of this report, whether or not it does have to go to council or whether it could be done through delegated authority. The previous one, I believe, was Shirkston Shores concert series, which again came to council because it wasn't considered to be by staff temporary in nature. So to describe the delegated authority that we do already have, and there is in fact delegated authority, to Councillor Bagu's point, there is delegated authority to the clerk, or, these are ORs, manager of bylaw services, or fire chief, or director of community safety and enforcement, which has been the fire chief in the past, to approve temporary noise variances pursuant to the noise bylaw, the condition being that the request is temporary in nature. So the struggle that staff was having, and the reason this report and the previous one was before council, is because of the definition of temporary. In our mind, we talked about this as staff, somebody comes in here and says, I own a factory, we're installing a machine, it's going to be noisy, we're going to install it on Friday, we'll be done by Sunday. That's temporary. There's a start and there's an end. We're behind and we're going to use that machine all day Sunday. That's temporary. There's a start and there's an end. The start of the day Sunday to the end of the day Sunday. If a person was in industry and wasn't allowed to make noise on Sundays, now that we own this machine, we're going to use it every Sunday from now on. That's permanent, and that would have to go to council. The previous two examples could be done by staff. This one is not necessarily permanent, but it is recurring. It's because it's a recurring. If council wants to say that music, amplified music on a recurring basis, like a summer concert series or a summer patio series, qualifies as temporary in nature and can be delegated to staff, I can take that as staff direction. Like, you could do a motion today, or you could, sort of say that happens. What I want to be careful about is, from time to time, we have folks that makers of, like, we have noisy uses that maybe aren't as popular with the public, and someone might say, I'd rather that go to council. When we start to pick and choose which ones go to council and which ones don't, I think businesses could say that we're picking on them. So I want to be careful that if we're going to delegate them, we sort of delegate them all. And then, of course, you do have the wording here from Ms. Hanson, which says if complaints do come forward, that they'll be sort of re-examined, the suitability. Let me see, I have a council member's hand up here. The one last thing I want to say is this was posted and no comments were received from the public for this particular application.
Okay, Councillor Bodnar.
So I'm okay with a business that has a track record that is good, okay? That staff could roll it over. But I'm not okay with new ones coming and staff make the decision. We have a problem on in Ward 4 that bylaw is dealing with. But I can tell you that the public that live around this want to have their say here at council if they ever come to request this, because they just did it and they're continuing to do bans every night of the week sometimes. So something like that, I don't want staff, doing the decision. I think the public expects to have a say, whether they show up or not. They would expect to have a say on somebody that's doing this for the first time. The Belmont's got a good track record, no complaints, doesn't have to come to us. But somebody new that has maybe pissed off the neighborhood and is coming here and they're only going to speak to staff, I'm not okay with that. So I don't know how we separate that out. But.
Well, so, Mr. Louie, then, based on what Councillor Bagui's brought up and what Councillor Bruno's brought up, could we have it where if it is a new enterprise, it does come to us the first time, and then staff has the option to renew these each year? There is the protection in there even during the first year. If something happens, staff can shut them down very quickly, which is good. But then it allows them to come back. So as I said, like the Belmont, we've had the fireworks over the years at Shirkston, which keeps coming back. To me, those are temporary. They're June, July, August, and it's done with. It's not for 12 months of the year. But if it's a first issue of this, then yeah, I think it should come to council. And I think staff should be continuing with that, with the monitoring. Not only monitoring, but when it's up for renewal or when they apply, that it goes out for comment, like we did with the Belmont, and nothing came back. Then staff has the delegated authority. Can you work it that way? I think that kind of gives what all of council wants. That way I'm looking at this.
Yep, I think through your worship, to Councillor Bodner's point, and to your point, we can say that if it's a renewal of a previously approved noise variance, that will continue to delegate that to staff. So even in your example, if a business was to open a brand new business right beside the Belmont, their first one would have to come to council, but their second and third and fourth one, even though they're in an area where there's already an approved exemption for someone else, they have to show that they can abide by the approval that's given by staff or by council in order for staff to be delegated the authority to continue to renew them. I like the word you used, renew, because it's a second and third and fourth time.
Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe to add to that, so if we're using the two examples, so the Belmont has demonstrated that they're adhering to the noise bylaw. If a new one comes to a different business for the first time, but there are complaints throughout that process, maybe it's not an automatic renewal the following year. Maybe it comes back to council with those considerations in place.
Yeah, and I think with the protections that, you know, in the one we're discussing tonight for the Belmont, is the fact that staff has some pretty hard, a hammer here, if you want to put it that way, that they'll pull it right away. So, and I think staff would next year not just automatically renew that they may say, you know, you're going to have to go back to council and kind of plead your case and based on complaints and everything else that come in. So I agree with you there. So any further questions or remarks on that? So I'm going to deal with this kind of separately, guys. So let's vote on the recommendation for the Belmont first, which I have councillors Bagu and Hoyle moving. Are there any further questions on that one? All in favor? That's carried. And then on direction to staff with regards to what was just discussed, can we give that to the CAO, talk to staff, and then let them proceed with that? And then I think, is the CAO an email back to all of us on kind of outlining that after he talks with staff? Is that fine with all you guys? And then we can delegate him to give the delegated authority. All right? Okay, perfect. That's fine. Okay, we have 2 more items here under correspondence, 9.2. Oh, sorry? Oh, I apologize. You did. And I do have it written here, 8.6, which I have councillors Bodner and Hoyle moving. Let me go back. I apologize, councillor. I'm looking off at 2 sheets, that's why. Okay. So 8.6 is the telecommunications facility siting agreement, Shared Tower, Inc., that the Chief Administrative Office Report 2024-77 be received. That the Council approve the lease agreement attached as Appendix B, being a lease agreement between the City of Port Colborne and Shared Tower, Inc., regarding telecommunications equipment being located on a portion of 2767 Vimy Ridge Road, as depicted in Appendix A. That the Director of Development and Government Relations is directed to bring a bylaw for Council to approve the lease agreement after the successful completion of the public engagement process. As I said, I had councillors Bodner and Hoyle to move that. Councillor Bodner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So this is a tower, we'll say the Boy Scout camp at Centennial Park. So there's been some public interest in this. And possibly some misinformation out there also. And so I just wanted to make it clear that we're not saying go ahead with this tonight. We're just saying it starts a public process. But the one thing I wonder if we could do, and it says right in the public engagement that the proponent, as well as the city, has to send a notice out with the same circulation radius as the city's notice, which is 120 meters. But it also says that the director, if they thought it was prudent, could require the proponent to increase that 120 meters. So in this area, anything north, they're going to pick up only one house. Anything east, they'll pick up one house. So the main residents are on Vimy Road, and I can't honestly translate 120 meters into where it, you know, maybe I should have had somebody smarter than me plot it on a map. But, you know, I'm thinking if 120 meters doesn't capture everybody on Vimy Road and Pinecrest Road on the other side that abuts that property, and also Cedar Bay Road on the other side, that because it's a little community in there. So 120 meters, I'm not sure is really going to pick up much of anything. So I'm just wondering whether we could consider sending that notice, the proponent, everybody on Vimy Road everybody on Cedar Bay Road, just up to the Friendship Trail, and just make that a square coming down Pinecrest Road there. It should capture anybody that is any interested in this, rather than only a few homes. So it just seems to be a little, we've done a number of these, and I don't remember any really big interest from anybody in it. But this has generated a little bit, so just wondering whether that's possible.
Okay, Mr. Cotton?
Through you, Mayor, to Council, we take our direction from Council. If Council wishes us to extend it, I can certainly speak with the Director of Planning, who would be in charge of that, and do that from our public engagement and request that of the proponent. Is there a distance, or is it, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, is it an additional distance, or is it just those specific streets you would prefer to be added to the circulation?
I think it's a geography. I'd be happy to sit down with somebody and it's pretty simple. It's just Vineyard Road, Cedar Bay Road, Friendship Trail, and down Pinecrest. So it's just that square there. And then you would pick up anybody that has any interest in it.
All right. Okay, Councillor Bruno?
Thank you, Worship. I'm just wondering if the origin of this report and the dimensions were driven by an outside authority like Transport Canada. So in other words, are we free to come up with any number? And I guess through you to the report writer, how did we come up with the number that we are now using?
Mr. Cotton?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. So they are a federally regulated agency, so there is a federal standard that they have to meet, and then we have our own public notice engagement. So the public notice engagement of 120 meters has been set by Council in the past, and the federal number is very close to that, I believe. So they're pretty much in line.
So in essence, we can. So in essence, we can create our own number. Just wanted to clarify that.
Mr. Cotton? Mr. CAO?
Sorry, through your worship to Councillor Bruno, I believe that we can because we do have our own city policy when it comes to telecommunication towers. If there was any reluctance on the part of staff to Councillor Bodner's sort of question, Councillor Bruno, it would be around setting a standard that doesn't apply in future applications. So if somebody applied in the urban area and we reverted back to our 120 meter sort of notification group, someone might come from 130 meters and say, but you did more in Ward 4. But the reason I will say the big but here is the geography. So we're sort of using a natural boundary that Councillor Bodner described to make sure people are notified, because we know we have bigger lots. We know we have more space between houses. So to say that you're going to go to the Friendship Trail, whether it's 120 meters or 90 meters, even less, it means that you're capturing sort of people in a natural geographical boundary rather than just drawing a circle around a pinpoint. So with that in mind, I think that council can proceed with that boundary without worrying about setting a precedent. So what I might do is have Mr. Cotton bring back Councillor Bodner's comments. So I'm still answering Councillor Bruno's question in a roundabout way to planning staff. And I mean, maybe we'll just put them on the phone with each other, councillor and staff, and make sure that we capture for both Ward 4 councillors what I think is a natural, like something that feels like it's the right group of people to be notified.
Councillor?
So I'm good with that. Do with the Ward 4 councillor's prerogative.
It does say in here, the city also reserves the right to require a larger circulation radius if, in the opinion of the director, it is warranted. So it does say that the city can do it if they want to do it.
Okay, to that point, any further comments on that? So if I could have Councillors Bruno and Aquilina put an amendment on the table with regards to enhancing the distance with the from the Friendship Trail up Pinecrest to the end of Pinecrest. Councillor, obviously.
I think it doesn't have to go to the end of Pinecrest. I think it just has to
go to Vimy. Okay, so from the Friendship Trail on Pinecrest to Vimy Road, going east to Cedar Bay Road, going down Cedar Bay South to the Friendship Trail. Is that all right, Councillor Aquilina? Everybody understand that? So this is an amendment? Okay, so we'll get that to staff. All those in favor? That's carried. Now back to the main motion. Further comments on this on the main motion as amended? Seeing none, I have Councillors Bodner and Hoyle moving that. All in favor? That's carried. Now on to correspondence. 9.2. This is a letter from the town of Fort Erie to the Honorable Sylvia Jones, Minister of Health, regarding a continuation of urgent care center operations in Fort Erie, and then in brackets it says, and Port Colborne, and requests for regional support. Councillor Bagu has asked for us to support this. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Aquilina. Any questions on it? All in favor? That's carried. So I just want to update council on this because it is timely. They did put us in brackets for the reason that in my conversations with Mayor Redekop, we are taking a whole different tact than Fort Erie on what they're doing. There will be an announcement in September. Council will be apprised of this in August, and then it'll come to a public announcement tentatively in September is what we're looking at. Our big concern here with regards to our health working group that reports to myself and then to senior staff, we've been really working hard with our medical community in Port Colborne and looking for ways to get more patients rostered. We feel that's hugely important within the city. We feel we've got about 10,000 people that aren't rostered. That is a tentative number only because we don't know who's rostered outside the community. So we think the plan that the physicians have come forward with and then have presented to our working group will make primary care far greater moving into the future than it is today. So, as I said, we are taking a whole different tact than Fort Erie, which is fine. That's fine. I have no issue with supporting the town of Fort Erie on this, but we have met with Sylvia Jones, the minister. We have met with the premier on this issue, and we're looking at some good information coming forward in the near future for council to discuss around this table, which I think you guys will really like. Okay. The next one is item 9.5. Correspondence from Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. It's a report number FA-27-24 regarding NPCA comments on proposed regulation detailing minister's permit and review powers, ERO posting 019-8320. It was a resolution that the board made. Just want to go to this. And it had to do with a report that went to the board itself, and it was in regard to staff's comments for their submission to the Environmental Registry of Ontario with the proposed regulations detailing minister's permit reviews. So the correspondence is there. Again, this was brought forward by Councillor Bagu to support. If I could have Councillor Elliott second that. That's all right. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. There's no presentations. There's no delegations. Past that. Sorry, there's no motions. And are any notices of motion being brought forward this evening? Seeing none. We have the minutes of the boards and committees, the Port Colborne Public Library Board, the Port Colborne Museum, the City of Port Colborne and the Township of Wainfleet Fire Services Review Committee minutes. If I could have Councillors Hoyle and Elliott move those. Are there any questions? All in favor? That's carried. We have bylaws, and just to remind council, under bylaw 22.6, it actually will be 20, as it was amended when we passed the agenda. It's 22.6A. It was the updated bylaw to authorize entering into an agreement of purchase and sale with 1342392 Ontario Ltd. for 235-241 Welland Street. So that was the amendment to that was posted after the agenda came out. We'll do the bylaws 22.1 through to 22.6, or sorry, through to 22.9 in block. If I could have Councillors Aquilina and Bodnar move those. Any questions?
Should we do 22.6A separately for the conflict? That's Tim's.
Oh, I do apologize, that's right. So I'm going to go with 22.6A. I do apologize, Councillor Hoyle, he does have a conflict with this. So it's Aquilina and Bodnar to move that. All in favor? That's carried. On the balance of the bylaws, same movers. All in favor? That's carried. And before we adjourn, Council, it's been reported now that the CAO of our Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority is moving to the Region of Fulton Conservation Authority. I was the chair of the hiring committee when we hired Chandra Sharma to come in and kind of steady the ship from quite contentious years prior to most of us being on council back then, and the issues that were going on with the NPCA. We had Ms. Wood that came in as an interim, and she started to calm the waters, but when Chandra came in, she made some changes. She brought staff morale up to unprecedented limits, quite frankly, has done great things. I do feel honored that I was one of the first calls she made to tell me that she was leaving. I don't sit on the board anymore. It's a smaller board, which I was one of the ones that supported that at Regional Council. The board was just too unwieldy. We actually gave a seat to Hamilton, and then we reduced our number of seats from the region of Niagara. But the NPCA, I mean, if there's a headline in the paper about the NPCA now, it's a good thing. It's no longer a bad thing, which bodes well for the last two boards, and or the last board and the current board, but it bodes well for Ms. Sharma, what she's done with the NPCA, and I really congratulate her on her move to a bigger authority, which is good. But she's still going to be working on some projects that have come forward. One is a tree, the 2 million tree planting initiative that they were originally turned down. My understanding is that money may be coming back from the federal government to do that across Niagara, so she said she would be continuing to work with that. There's a number of projects in Port Colborne that we've been talking to her about. She would still be involved with those somewhat, and then help the new CAO when that person is hired to ease into that and introduce that person to us. So, you know, again, we congratulate Chandra with the work she's done and how she's led the NPCA over the last number of years. So, yeah, and we thank her. So with that, council, we are adjourned, and we thank everybody for watching from home this evening.